America's taste for the fresh oranges and lemons grown in Riverside, California, turned this dusty city along the Santa Ana River into the wealthiest city in America on a per capita basis by 1893, only a few years after Riverside's founding in 1870, with opportunities multiplying practically every day under the plentiful Riverside sun. People from all over America and around the world found their way to Riverside to find their American dream. Riverside changed from a boom town to a cosmopolitan city as immigrants from such faraway places like Germany, Italy, Sweden, and China found a home in Riverside. Japanese immigrants looking for new opportunities following the Meiji Restoration of Japan also began to find their way to Riverside after the Chinese exclusion law in 1882 restricted the numbers of laborers from China who could enter the United States. By the turn of the century, Riverside's Japanese immigrant community was humming with activity. Immigrants from Japan came to work in the citrus growing industry, but they also set up other businesses serving fellow immigrants and locals as well. They started to put down roots in the fertile Riverside soil by starting churches, sending their children to school, and sharing with other Riversiders in times of joy and grief. Japanese schoolteacher Jukichi Harada and his wife Ken moved to Riverside with their firstborn son in 1905. Jukichi soon found work at a restaurant owned by a fellow Japanese immigrant and later opened his own restaurant. The Haradas, finding Riverside a family-friendly place, grew their family. Like many an immigrant before and since, Jukichi and Ken worked a second job as managers of the rooming house where they lived. But living in the rooming house was not safe or healthy for their children, so Jukichi and Ken decided to buy a house in one of Riverside's nicest neighborhoods. With their hard-earned savings, the Haradas in 1915 bought their dream house at 3356 Lemon Street. The Harada children loved that house. They finally had a yard to play in. Today, the Harada House is a fragile but still standing National Historic Landmark like no other. But the Harada House stands proudly as the only National Historic Landmark that represents the historic events experienced by a single family. Although the Harada children loved that house when they moved in, some of their neighbors weren't so happy with a Japanese-American family moving into their decent neighborhood. Soon a committee was formed by the neighbors not to welcome the Haradas, but to try to get the Haradas removed from their dream house. As it turns out, the law at the time was on the neighbors' side, or so it seemed. In 1909, California first tried to enact a law that prohibited Japanese immigrants from owning real estate, but that law failed. By 1913, things had changed in California with increasing anti-Japanese sentiment, and the Alien Land Law was enacted. Japanese immigrants were now outright prohibited from owning real estate in California. So when they bought their house, the Haradas simply put the house in the name of their 3 minor children who were born in California and were American citizens. That wasn't good enough, so the neighborhood committee persuaded the California Attorney General to prosecute Jukichi for violating the Alien Land Law, even though the Harada house was bought in the name of his American citizen children. The trial was held in 1918 in the Riverside County Superior Courthouse, which still operates as a busy courthouse to this day. The Haradas won the case. The judge ruled that the Harada children were the real owners of the house, and because they were American citizens, there was no violation of the Alien Land Law. Jukichi and Ken went on to raise their large family in that house and lived there happily for a while. Nearly a quarter of a century after winning their court case, Jukichi and Ken were forced to leave their dream house on Lemon Street during the Japanese internment of World War II. Older and in ill health by then, Jukichi and Ken would never return to their home. They passed away in the internment camps. After the war, Jukichi and Ken's daughter, Sumi, one of the 3 children who owned the house, and by then an adult, would return to the Harada house and live the rest of her life there. After Sumi passed away in the year 2000, her brother, Dr. Harold Harada, donated the Harada house to the city of Riverside so it could continue to stand as a testament to the power and resilience of those who come to America to search for the American dream. The city of Riverside is currently undertaking a daunting restoration project to save the building for future generations. The National Historic Landmark Harada House on Lemon Street represents one family's fight against those who would stop them from living their American dream. It also reminds us, as Sumi Harada long ago pointed out, that we must never stop being vigilant of our civil liberties and rights.